Good evening. I would like to welcome you all to our fall installment of the Living Well with ALS teleseries. And I want to thank you for joining us this evening. We all know how an ALS diagnosis could impact everyone's life, especially children and young adults. This program is an educational event designed to provide guidance and resources to families and all those supporting children and adolescents whose lives are impacted by ALS. Before we get started and before we introduce our amazing presenters, I would like to quickly go over a couple of housekeeping items. Everyone from the audience will be muted by default throughout the session to reduce static noise. You are welcome to use the Q&A tab on the right side on the bottom of your screen to type in your questions. We will go over them at the end of the program, at the end of the presentation. If for some reason we do not get to all the questions today within the allocated time, we will follow up with answers via email. A recording of today's session will be available at a future date. All attendees will receive notifications via email. Now, I would like to introduce our first presenter, our very own Jennifer Beckman. Jennifer is a care services coordinator for the ALS Association Greater Chicago chapter. She is the developer and facilitator of the Always Loved and Supported Bereavement Support Group. She is a licensed clinical social worker and has been in practice for over 14 years. Jennifer has a personal connection to ALS as she lost her grandfather to the disease in 2002. Jennifer will explain anticipatory grief and what to expect in children.
Thank you so much, Joumana. I appreciate that introduction. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I am so honored to be here with all of you tonight. I am going to take a minute and share my screen so that I can share with you my PowerPoint presentation here. All right. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. And okay. All right. Well, again, thank you all for letting me join you tonight and talk to you about this, this topic. I am here to talk to you all about anticipatory grief, specifically in children. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about kind of spans through children, teenagers, adults. And so we will, sorry, I got a message, I apologize, I got a little distracted. All right, so anticipatory grief is essentially the grief that happens before the death. It refers to a wide range of thoughts and feelings that accompany the sense of impending loss. For youth, it may take forms. Depending on the age of the children, it may affect their overall functioning, that of the family, and their understanding of the illness to date. So I want to say before I talk about these responses that everyone's grief journey is different. And unique to them, and there's no timeline for grief, and it's just very specific to each person. It's specific to each family. And after this slide, I'll talk a little bit about responses or how to help. And again, this all just varies from family to family, from person to person, and only you know what's best for your family. But just kind of an overall, just some information to help you get through maybe some difficult times. So a lot of these are going to be kind of self-explanatory and kind of expected. Some symptoms or responses, I should say, some responses to grief could include sadness around the upcoming loss or the losses, preoccupation with the person who is sick or their needs or just their overall well-being. Anger can be very common, and it's okay. there could be anger about the changes that are going on, and that could constantly be changing, as you all know. Confusion as to why someone with ALS is sick, or confusion as to what's going on. And I also forgot to mention that a lot of these will also vary on the ages for the children. Maybe young children to teenagers at all, their responses will vary. And I think some of the other presenters are going to go in more detail about what to expect at each age group. But loneliness could occur, helplessness, hopelessness, that most likely that they can't change the fact that the person is sick. Guilt. A lot of times children will think that the person's illness is their fault, or guilt surrounding that they can't do anything and they can't help or they can't fix it. Fear, of course, could be a response to grief. Worrying about other family members passing. Anxiety, of course, could be coming up for them about when, why things change, when things change. Isolation. Sometimes kiddos aren't comfortable talking about how they're feeling. Irritability could be a response as well. And a heightened sensitivity to noise, light, conflict, change, other people's feelings. A rehearsal of the death could be something that they think about when they're trying to process everything that's going on. Physical issues such as changes in their sleep patterns, headaches, stomach aches, maybe sometimes tightness in the chest. And they also may have difficulty focusing, concentrating, or remembering things. And they also might feel some frustration, kind of balancing hope with, the reality of what's going on might be really difficult for them. Okay, so some ways to help. Like I said a little bit ago, it's everything is dependent on the family dynamics. It depends on the individual. So these are just kind of some overall helpful ideas, and to help you kind of navigate, how to help them with all their big feelings. So providing the child with age-appropriate information about all aspects of what's going on: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Inviting them to ask questions and answering honestly and age appropriate, which again, that's going to be expanded on a little bit later. Another thing I would add to this is, and I think I might actually bring it up a little bit later, but answering honestly, allowing them to ask questions, and allowing them to feel whatever it is that they're feeling, the anger, the sadness. Allowing them to feel that is really important for them as well. Oh, I guess I'm ahead of myself. The next one is allowing them to express their emotions as necessary, and helping them feel valid in their feelings. Letting them know that it's okay that they feel that way. Allowing the child to be involved in the level of care that it's comfortable for them, and again, also age appropriate. I think all of these could be, kind of, as age appropriate, and also whatever, we also want to take into consideration the comfort level of the person that has ALS, or whatever they're comfortable with as well. Reaffirming that they will be cared for, that they will always be cared for. And then, providing an opportunity to say goodbye in a way that's helpful to the child or the young person, whatever that looks like for the family, whatever's most comfortable. I know comfortable is kind of a hard word. That's an uncomfortable conversation, but it can be really helpful for them later on. When talking with your child, teenager, young adult, again, all age appropriate, but using simple and clear language is very helpful. If we as with anything, if we use bigger words, it'll be confused and, could make it more difficult for them. When they're asking a lot of questions, and it's okay to not have the answers or not really sure what to say. You can say to them that you're not really sure at the moment, or you could also say to them, in modeling your feelings, you could say to them that that you're having a difficult time in the moment, and that you will come back with them and talk about it again some more. Kind of going off what I just said, do not be afraid to express your emotions in front of the child. That's good modeling for them. If they see you managing your emotions, that will help them to do that as well. I think some parents or caregivers, grandparents may want to protect their child from pain and want to maybe keep them away from that. I think it's best to not to do that, to really have these open and honest conversations as much as you can and as much as you're comfortable with. It's also important to continue daily structure and extracurricular activities. That being said, I absolutely know how difficult that is, and sometimes it might not always be possible, but if it's possible, it's really beneficial for them to maintain their routines as much as possible. Another helpful thing, if your kiddos are in school, is to make sure that the child's teacher is aware of the diagnosis, so that if something occurs at school, or if the child wants to talk at school, and the teacher's aware, and they could also bring in, maybe the school social worker or school counselor if needed, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page and is able to provide the appropriate support. Continue to make memories, as much as possible, and maybe making a special remembrance book, or taking videos of memories. They can look back on them whenever they want to. Having hope for the future, and talking about that in the next bulletin right there is, maybe talking, if you have older children, maybe talking with the older children about their future plans with the person, could be really beneficial for them later on as well. So when I sat down to do this presentation, it didn't hit me until I sat down that I was actually a child that had anticipatory grief. It was grieving as a child. And so I just super briefly, I just wanted to share with you that this is my grandpa. I think Joumana said this in my introduction, but my grandpa was diagnosed with ALS when I turned 13, and then passed away a few weeks before my 18th birthday. And so, like I said, when I sat down to write this presentation, I thought about, what went, in terms of my mom helping me grieve, what worked, what didn't work. Some thoughts that I had was that I remember my mom always told me the truth, which I feel really helped me in the long run. And my family, we did our best to make as many memories as we possibly could. I remember going to Disney World with my grandpa. We put him in a wheelchair and wheeled him around. And so that's a really good core memory that I have. One interesting thing that my mom shared was that, so I have a younger brother who's 2 years younger. One interesting thing that she shared is that my brother and I responded differently than what she had expected. And so, that might be the same. Any parents or caregivers, grandparents out there, that might be the same for you. It kind of goes back to, allowing children to express themselves, whatever they're feeling, and, kind of meeting them where they're at. I actually, in preparation for this, I called my mom and asked her if she had any great insight about, being a parent to, so this was her father. So I asked her if she had any great insight, looking back on what she could have done differently, or what she thought she did well. And the very first thing, without hesitation, that she said was that she wished she would have taken better care of herself. And I could not agree more. I could spend a whole webinar talking about this, but very briefly, because I don't want to take up all the presenters' times. But one thing she said was that the only thing that she said was that she wished she would have taken care of herself a little bit better, and given herself some space to grieve. I really like this quote here that, taking care of myself doesn't mean me first, it means me too. A lot of times when I talk to folks, I remind them that, when you're on an airplane and they're going over the safety protocols, and they say, if the pressure in the cabin changes, the masks are going to come down. You got to put your mask on first before you can help someone else. This applies here. I would encourage everybody to make sure that you are also taking care of yourself. I know that your plates are extremely full, but the best you can, take some time to yourself, whether that's just getting out and doing something that you enjoy for a little bit, or going to doctor's appointments, or whatever it is that brings you joy. Please spend a little bit of time doing that, and allowing yourself some time to grieve. If you need to see a therapist, or if you just need to meet a friend for coffee, I would encourage you to do that. But that was actually, I didn't ask if we were going to share these resources, but I can ask. I have some resources and support that I can share with everybody, and some books if anyone's interested. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, we will be sharing the recording after that, so those resources will be very helpful. So I appreciate you sharing them. Thank you. So now we will move on to our next awesome speaker. I would like to introduce Miss Liz Pollack. Miss Pollack is a psychotherapist with more than 35 years experience in her field. Her clinical interests include managing life transitions, relationship issues, trauma, and bereavement experiences. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Like Jennifer and the other panelists, I am honored to be here and to have been asked to share some information. And I think it's a nice segue from what Jennifer just shared in terms of the anticipatory, the preparation for what we know is ahead. I have some information about age-appropriate responses that children have, and I'd like just to kind of go through those things. And I do agree with everything that Jennifer said, and I can emphasize easily that everybody does experience grief in a different way. And for children, it depends a lot also on what the relationship is that they've had with this person, how good it was, if there was conflict present, how close they were, and then add to those kinds of factors, potential age and gender, and their emotional state as it is. Are they a feeling, very emotional child, or are they a child that's very thoughtful? Also, are they an open child in terms of a child who shares their feelings openly, or do they tend just to keep things in anyway? So all of those kinds of factors do play a role in how they're going to experience the grief. Also, by the way, if they've had any other past losses and what those losses were like. One of the big things that Jennifer said, and I totally agree with, is I think that parents being honest with kids is critical. I also think as important as it is for parents to be honest with their feelings, what kids also need is a lot of reassurance and a lot of calm, because they're going to take their cues from their parents and other caregivers. And so let's just go ahead and plunge in with the age of baby. So we're talking 0 to 2 years of age. And basically, of course, these babies are too young to understand the concept of death, but they do understand a change in their environment. And they may perceive that, they don't have the words for it, but they may perceive it as a form of abandonment or loss. And they may feel very insecure and not knowing what's going on. They have no concept of the permanence of death, but they also have no way of communicating or understanding in any way what they're feeling. So you're probably going to see quite a bit of crying and fussy and clinging behaviors, probably a level of anxiety too, because of change, and change makes all of us anxious for the most part. So I think these babies are going to be showing some of that. You may even see it in the later part of the 0 to some level of regression. So say the child had been potty trained, but then this change has happened now in their environment, and suddenly they're not using the potty, they're um, peeing in their pants or pooping in their pants. And so you may see some form of regression. Again, it's just the fear that's associated with the loss. The way to combat that to some degree, of course, are lots of cuddles, lots of reassurances, the showing of great love, and comforters of some sort, whether it's the baby's blanket, the pacifier, any kind of stuffed toy, anything that maybe even has the scent of the person who's gone, those kinds of things. But beyond that, just the reassurance and the support and the love, those are the three main aspects. Then you, of course, have the toddlers, which is the 2 to 4 age. And in this way, these little kids cannot fathom the idea that death is permanent. And so this age is very common to actually, for kids to experience what we call magical thinking. And that works in a good way, but also in a bad way. And the good way is for the kid, and I say good in terms of it gives the child hope, thinking that the person's going to come back and be alive again. And the bad thing is that they blame themselves. They think that there was something that they did or said that might have caused that. And again, let me just address that when I say good and bad. The good is also sad because obviously the person isn't coming back. But if you're a believer, you might also add to the child that someday that person would see, or the child would see that person again. So it could be something like that. But for right now, that child is not going to see that person. So I think that what's really important in this age and in the next age too that we're going to talk about is that the wording that parents use or caregivers use with children is really important. So the words to avoid using at this point would be, he passed away, he went to sleep, or, she'll be in a very deep and long sleep, something like that. You don't want to say those kinds of things. It's better just to say the person is gone, or even to introduce the idea of death. I know there have been some studies that actually say that to have pets in an early age can help children with the concept of life and death. I know in my own experience, I learned it early when my goldfish died, and my parents flushed the goldfish, and that might sound harsh, but I remember when they did that and they said, it's a very natural death for a goldfish to be back in the water. And I understood that the goldfish was gone, was dead. And so using the more direct language, even though it may sound harsh to adults, it's easier for the children. And some of the things that you might see at this age, by the way, is crying, the baby or the toddler being clingy. Even tantrums are very frequent with this. You may see some withdrawal, some change in sleeping and eating habits. And like the babies that we talked about, even some regression. Once again, what we try to suggest is lots of reassurance, lots of hugging and support and showing of love. And also trying to bring into this toddler's life people who are familiar, because again, it's that change in the environment. The next age that we're going to kind of look at would be 5 to 12, and that's a pretty big range. But some of the same kinds of things are happening in this range. And one of the things that's most important is that at between 5 and 12, children are understanding better that death is permanent, and wishing that the person is alive isn't going to make it, isn't going to happen. And so very often kids are experiencing a level of anxiety, not only about the person having passed away, and I say that between us, not using that statement with kids, but also wondering about their own potential death, because they're catching on that is part of life. And they may worry about what's going to happen to me, and will I die, and those kinds of questions. And they may also be asking who else is going to die. So they're starting to generalize that, and they're saying who else in my life may die, and be worried that something else is going to be happening to someone that they love. So that becomes in itself a very difficult situation. And that's part of that process of them grieving. They also might say, well, where is that person now? Where's that body, that person's body, or where are they? And trying to really understand that, which is, I think that's a hard concept for adults. I know I kept trying to ask that when my grandmother died and I was 28 years old. And I'm going like, well, what does the religion say about this? What's my spirituality saying? And so it's very common that that's the next question is, where is that person or that body? So there's just so much we still don't understand about grief and what happens after death. Let's see, they could also be blaming themselves. Again, in this range, you have a lot of child developmental kinds of things happening. And one of the developmental stages, of course, is the egocentrism, where children are so focused on themselves and they think that they're sort of the center of things. And so it isn't uncommon then for children to say, well, was it something I did or something that I said? And so we really need to make sure that they understand that it wasn't them that caused any of this, and that they were very loved by this person. Also, some of the signs that we can see in this age range is that children can be very distracted and forgetful. They could be very anxious and start having anxiety attacks or even panic attacks. And they may become very focused on their own physical ailments. So you may hear children talking about, oh, my tummy hurts, or I have a headache. And again, they're just that physical focus, and to some degree that takes some of the focus away from the pain, and sort of gives them a new direction for their thinking. And so again, they may say, I don't want to go to school today, my tummy hurts. And they may be just feeling very insecure to go into the world and prefer to stay home with, people that they know. And it's okay to allow that on occasion, but it isn't good to necessarily have that be an all the time kind of thing. Also, children have a tendency to try to take on some responsibilities that are more adult. And again, this tends to happen in the later part of this stage. And I've heard people say, well, now you're going to have to be the man in the family, or, you know, the mom kind of in the family. And that's an awful lot to put on kids. And so I would never, ever recommend that we do that and overpower kids or put those kinds of expectations or responsibilities, because they're still kids and they still need to be kids. And it's very natural for kids to want to assume that role. And we have to be careful that we just don't let them do that. We also may see kids withdrawing and not wanting to be social at all. And this may be because they're feeling different than their friends if their friends haven't experienced a loss in the family. And it could also be that they have no idea really how to express their own feelings. And one other thing that I want to say about this too is that it's important, again, that we offer that reassurance, a lot of support, a lot of love. And in the later stages, and I would say probably 6, 7 and up, we might want to try and involve them in some of the planning of the funeral or family rituals that you may do after a loss. Definitely them going to the funeral, we don't want to force that, but I think we should try to make that as part of, this is the process and this is what we do to honor them. And also, one of the things that Jennifer said, and I think this is really important, is, you know, to provide the memories. And so yes, having them do a scrapbook or a journal or some sort of memory book is fantastic idea. There's all kinds of things that they can do, and maybe even make some money and donate it to a cause that this person believed in or was involved in, something like that. That would be great. Maybe even helping to support ALS and the work that ALS does to help. So there's all kinds of ways that kids can feel like they're doing something. And that, I think, for all of us, when we grieve, we feel so helpless. And so giving children that opportunity, I think, is very, very helpful. Then the latter stage, the 13 and up, and again, that's a pretty broad range. But at this point, children have a much better understanding of death as being part of life. And the complication here for this age range, though, is that very often they're already dealing with puberty. They're dealing with relationship issues socially with kids at school. And physiologically, you know, they're not thinking as clearly because of what's going on in puberty. And so there has to be some extra patience. This age range, a lot of the kids are angry a lot and feeling a lot of anxiety and angst, and they may not be very talkative. And so anything you can do to encourage discussion and, you know, let your kids know it's really okay. And even if they don't have words to describe what they're feeling, you know, that you're there, that you understand, and that you love them. One way to connect with them is to make sure that they're eating the evening meal with you, because that's a great way of checking in with them. You may see that they're wanting to spend more time with their friends than with their family, and that's a normal reaction. It kind of gives them a respite from maybe some of the sadness in the home. And so I think it's okay to let children do that, as long as you know where they're at and that you have you feel comfortable with the parents of these children that they're playing with. There is also a tendency for teenagers to want to isolate, stay in their rooms, listen to their music, talk on the phone, those kinds of things. Again, it's hard to know how much of that is just that age and how much of it is trying to cope with loss. But that's where as much as you can to get them to talk is going to be helpful. Let's see, I'm thinking and making sure I'm not leaving something out. Oh, they are probably also going to feel socially isolated to a point, especially again, if their friends have not had these kind of losses before. So I think it's really important that that they realize that this is just a part of life. So really that's what I have. I would recommend a great book that was just published. It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And it was written by a friend of mine who's another therapist. And the name of the book is Lola and the Tree of Life. And it was written by Susan Rising, and her last name is spelled Reising, and it's Lola as Lola. And so it's Lola and the Tree of Life. And it is a beautiful book that addresses death, but does it in a very peaceful way. And if you haven't already heard of it or read it, I definitely recommend that. And I know Jennifer has some resources that she spoke of too. So I say take advantage of those kinds of resources. Check them out ahead of time to make sure that you know what would be best for your child. So again, in closing, I just thank you all. And my heart is with you all.
Thank you so much, Liz. This was wonderful. We appreciate the resource that you provide as well. This was excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your time as well.
Thank you so much.
Yes. On to our last portion of the program. So last but not least, I would like to present a wonderful team from a partner organization called Hope Loves Company. It's a not-for-profit organization that we partner with that take care of kids of all ages who are going through this. It is led by the executive director, Ms. Shannon Sullivan, who just came back from a long trip and is battling jet lag, and they're all hosting from the East Coast. I might add, and her amazing team, Michella, Larch, and Virginia, Mittnacht. Michella is the communication and fundraising specialist, and Virginia is a licensed therapist, and they will provide a brief overview of LC and talk about some of the challenges faced by young caregivers, the therapeutic side of things, and the goal of supporting activities. Take the floor.
Thank you so much, Joumana, and thank you to all the other presenters today. I really appreciate your input and learning a little bit more about how we can all care for the young caregivers and the young people who are dealing with a family member or a loved one with ALS. So to tell you a little bit about, to introduce us first before we get started, thank you, Joumana, for our introduction. Myself, Michella, and Virginia will be going back and forth throughout the slides, throughout the presentation. So to tell you a little bit about Hope Loves Company and who we are. Hope Loves Company was founded in 2012 by Jody O'Donnell Ames after she realized the lack of resources available to her children, who all lost a parent to ALS before the age of 12. Hope Loves Company is the only nonprofit in the US dedicated to providing both emotional and educational support to children and young adults who have or have had a loved one battling ALS. Now, I want to stress, I said have or have had. We work with children who currently have a loved one with ALS or somebody who has passed away. So even if that loved one has passed away for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, we will still work with that family as we understand that the grief process can last throughout childhood and into adulthood. So we still want to be able to work with these individuals and try to help whatever way we can. So HLC is based in Pennington, New Jersey, and our premier program, Camp HLC, takes place in 6 different states, including New Jersey, Illinois, Georgia, California, Massachusetts, and Indiana, as well as virtually via Zoom.
Hi, everybody. Virginia here. I just also want to thank everybody for their wonderful presentation so far. And, as we heard in the presentations from Jennifer and Liz, and as you all are intimately aware, navigating the journey of ALS is extremely difficult, right? And for young people, and especially children and adolescents, their experience of caregiving and more widely their experience with loss and grief is complicated, and it's multi-layered, right? And so accepting and adapting to this change when there's already so much developmental change happening at these ages, it's intense, right? And it can be really impactful. Now, one piece, the ambiguous loss is one piece I just want to call attention to. It kind of goes hand in hand to what we were hearing about earlier. But, the nature and the course of the disease contributes to what's called ambiguous loss, in addition to anticipatory grief, which is a loss that occurs when a loved one is physically with us, but is not mentally and emotionally with us in the same way as before. Right. And so young people are often grieving the loss of a parent or a loved one as they knew them before ALS. And it can leave kids in a place of real confusion and of searching for answers and, feeling of kind of lack of conclusion or closure, which can really complicate the grieving process, the healing process, and kind of lead to unresolved grief. And so in addition to kind of the ambiguous loss that we kind of experience connected to the relationship, children can also experience a lot of, and adolescents can certainly experience a lot of kind of secondary losses, especially as the ALS journey kind of progresses, right? So certainly changes in routines and lifestyle, absolutely at home, but also most definitely in school spaces, in times with friends and in social spheres. And any kind of opportunity for, normotypical experiences that are associated with being a kid, right? And, the combination of these losses can lead to really complicated and diverse feelings and expressions of grief. And, without the support, which is where, we kind of hope to come in with HLC, it can lead to prolonged mental health challenges and behavioral challenges and issues and, withdrawal, self-isolation, and self-insecurity. And, I just want to stress again, it's a time when children and adolescents are really trying to develop that sense of self, right? And so this can really act as a rupture to that process and, thus kind of like an isolation from opportunities to grow and to really gain that sense of self. So it's so important that we, provide safe and secure places and opportunities for young people to process this life change and to connect together and to learn healthy ways to navigate it so that they can lead happy and healthy lives. And this takes us to goals. So this is certainly the goals or the goal of the activities that HLC that we provide through HLC, and everything we do at HLC is aimed at, diminishing these feelings of isolation and encouraging, the building of connection with others who do understand the unique experience of caring for a loved one with ALS. And we really hope to cultivate a space that feels conducive for dialogue for young people and their families around the complicated experience of ALS. We certainly aim to validate and to allow space for and really, kind of honor the diverse range of feelings that are associated with this process. We were talking about this a bit earlier, but certainly sadness, but also guilt and resentment and anger and frustration, some of those kind of scary feelings that we bury because we fear what it means to say them out loud, right? And, kind of associated with our lives being turned upside down, these children's lives being turned upside down. And I think there's we've seen this, solidarity and support in feeling them and identifying them together, right? And this time together really gives kids the opportunity to share their experiences and, and the connected feelings in a space that's safe and non-judgmental and comforting. And just a few more points there through our activities and certainly through our group spaces, which we'll talk about a little later. We really kind of aim to explore like healthy and appropriate ways to manage and express our feelings, right? So certainly verbally, and how we communicate our feelings and our wants and needs, whether it be with loved ones or friends or coaches or teachers, and also non-verbally, right? How we can express ourselves through art or music or painting, drawing, journaling, exercise, right? We also really focus on building skills, right? So skills in self-soothing, such as deep breathing and mindfulness practices and yoga. We explore self-care strategies. We kind of aim to bring awareness to self-care strategies or the activities we all love, right? That help us feel connected to ourselves and share them together. And, it's places like camp and these other opportunities through HLC that we also can just really have fun, right? And to take a break and space from home life and to just enjoy being a kid in a space that's enriching and restorative, and to be a family together in a space that's enjoyable and, really comforting. And so it's also a place to, build memories and connection with peers and within families so that when we do go home, we feel more supported and connected to others and to ourselves, right?
Awesome. And now we'll move on to our Hope Loves Company programs. One big thing to note about our programs, all of them are free for kids, teens, and young adults who have or had a loved one with ALS. And Camp HLC is our premier program, but as you can see, we have so many. So Camp HLC, many of you know, but it's typically a 3-day overnight retreat for children and young adults. We usually say between the ages of 6 and 21 who have or had a loved one battling ALS. Families, parents, grandparents are all invited as well. It's an opportunity to have fun, be challenged through team building exercises, and meet other people, other kids who are going through a similar experience that you're going through. We have a lot of fun things. We have hikes, we have games, we have zip lines, we have rock climbing, boating, fishing. But then we also have, and to Virginia's point, we have these this time to kind of reflect a little bit more. We have yoga, we have music, we have group therapy sessions that we have at camp. And as you'll hear through quotes in a video later on, a huge part of camp and most of our programs is actually meeting other kids going through the similar thing that you are and connecting at camp, but then connecting afterwards. Our Hugs of Hope care packages, we always say they're a hug from afar. And these go out to families all across the country. And again, they're free. And it includes an age-appropriate gift, a stuffed animal or a gift card, an HLC t-shirt, a card, a handwritten card from the HLC staff, a snack, an HLC wristband, book, and an HLC brochure. Our virtual HLC hangouts and meet and greets, Virginia will be touching on this a little bit more later on, so I won't go into too much detail on this, but it's essentially a time set aside every month for different age groups to get together and connect, and they are always led by a mental health professional like Virginia. Our Young Ambassador program is for teens and young adults who have attended at least, we say, one Camp HLC weekend. They can apply for the program. They can attend meetings and events, speak publicly about their ALS journey, spread awareness about HLC and ALS. They can host fundraisers. They can write for our newsletter and our website. So we say this is a great opportunity for them to build their business, writing, public speaking, and marketing skills through that program. We have 2 scholarships in honor of 2 amazing women, Susan B. Anderson and Sarah E.K. Cooper. Both passed away from ALS. These scholarships are offered every fall, and we are now accepting applications for them through the end of the month, through October 31st. We have so many resources listed on our website as well, organizations, podcasts, books, and we put many of the books in our Hugs of Hope care packages. And just to touch on some of those books, What Did You Learn Today was written by Tina Singer Ames. She had ALS, and it gently explains ALS to younger children. And our founder, Jody, wrote The Stars That Shine. And this is another great book for kids to kind of to help them and to introduce them to ALS in a gentle way. And our founder, Jody, also wrote Someone I Love Has ALS with other contributing authors. And the ALS Association obviously also has a lot of great resources on how to speak to, your children about ALS, and books that are age specific for children. And with that, we'll go to a little bit more about Camp HLC. And again, I just touched on a lot of that, but the goals, as we've been saying, is to connect with peers who share in your experiences, to develop healthy coping skills through activities like yoga and art therapy, group therapy sessions. Also just to have fun and to take a little break away from the normal day-to-day. As we've touched on, a lot of the kids are caregivers themselves. So this gives them a break to be at camp with other kids and just have fun and to share their experiences in a safe and inclusive environment with their counselors and peers. So this is a picture from our camp, HLC Chicago 2019. And I wanted to share with you all a quote that is really impactful, and it came from our most recent camp. It was from a mom of HLC campers, and she said, "I have been so excited and also extremely nervous about them being able to get time away, but also with other people who understand. If I could explain with one word how they felt when I saw them last night, it would be light. It was like seeing them pre-ALS. They all were saying how amazing the camp was, the activities were so fun, the people were so caring, and the environment was so uplifting. They kept telling stories of the things they did and saying how grateful they were and how they didn't want to come home. I asked if it was difficult because it was centered around ALS, and they said no, the exact opposite, because we get that question a lot. They told me that with all of their friends at home, they feel so different because no one else understands. And at camp, they met people who understood and were going through the same thing." So I thought that quote was very, very impactful. And with that, we'll turn it over to Virginia to talk about the HLC Hangouts.
Yeah, so to Michella's point, one of our many activities that we provide at camp is group shares, right? Or kind of these group therapy sessions that we during that time, we kind of split up into these age specific groups, and we really aim to provide a safe and also confidential space to share in our experience with ALS together. And I've had the privilege of, attending camp in person, but also running online groups that we provide throughout the school year with kids and teens through HLC. And they occur monthly. And we really feel like they provide an accessible and inclusive way to connect to peers across the country, right? An opportunity that really wouldn't be there without the virtual option, right? And the group provides a combination of kind of formal and informal activities. So we might provide some developmentally appropriate and kind of tailored education on the experience and expressions of grief in young people in these spaces. And, we really aim to kind of normalize the grieving process during this time, really kind of reiterating that what you're experiencing is expected, and it's hard and it feels impossible sometimes, but it's expected and you're not alone and it's okay. we really aim to validate and to teach and to, kind of share and to learn together, which I know we kind of talked a little bit about earlier. But most importantly, these group spaces are about building connection, especially through kind of the repetition of having them each month, right? So we can build on that time together. And about building friendship and about talking about the shared experience with ALS, but also just as life as a middle or high schooler in general. Sometimes I just take a back seat and let these kids talk about the latest Harry Styles songs or TV shows that they're watching, and just hearing them laugh and enjoy each other. And so I think as much as it is a space of processing and healing and connection in the way of connecting around ALS, it's also just a place to feel like there's some sense of normalcy around being your age, which I think is really wonderful. And many of these kids also have started their own kind of chats, right, outside of our group, so that they can kind of connect without having a mental health professional in the room, which I think is really valuable. And they connect to each other outside of camp and outside of the hangout. So there's a real kind of tether, right, that keeps everybody together, from camp on, right. And, I'll just note, as someone who does practice therapy mainly virtually with children and adolescents, I know there's a lot of, I often get that there's a lot of confusion and perhaps kind of misconception around the benefit of virtual mental health services. And, but I've learned, through this work through HLC and my own professional work, that just having a space that is non-judgmental and secure for kids to come together and to connect, and to be able to do so from California to New Jersey, it really promotes like real connection and change, and like kind of positive, emotional and mental health. So I just want to stress that as well. And I'll just share a few quotes from our campers here as well. These are about the hangouts and about camp in general. So I found that it was the feeling of not being alone in these harsh struggles that made me survive taking care of my dad. Then knowing that many others had walked my path was also comforting when he died. This is the one place that they can come to talk about it, ALS, and talk to each other who have had similar experiences and cope and grieve with each other. I am so happy that I am in Hope Love's company with my dad's support through the tough times I go through, and the tough times my dad goes through, and all of the great people I met that help out my dad and support him, and all of you great people too.
All right, and we just had some pictures there just from a lot of our programs. You got the little guy on the left with his s'more at virtual camp. So we mailed those packages out, and you see all the smiles on the faces. And fishing is always a staple at most of our camps. And so we wanted to share those pictures with all of you. And we all really like this quote too. Children, after all, are not just adults in the making. They are people whose current needs and rights and experiences must be taken seriously. And this picture is Mackenzie Anderson. So she started as a camper. She lost her mom, who's in the picture here, to ALS at the age of 17. And now Mackenzie is on our Hopeless Company board of directors as our secretary. One more quote for all of you. It was incredible to be around people who all understood me. And this is a camper about Camp HLC. And I have lots of friends. I have lots of supportive people in my life, but it's just different when it's somebody who has been through the exact same thing as me. And having been at Camp HLC for a short weekend, it kind of opened my eyes to a lot of ways that ALS had impacted my life that I hadn't really noticed. And it made me want to kind of talk about ALS more, just in case there were other people that were isolated. And with that we want to share a really quick 1-minute video with you all just about the impact of Camp HLC.
HLC, or Hopeless Company, is an incredible nonprofit that supports children and young adults who have problems with ALS. It's a great
Sorry about that. YouTube got away from me. Sorry about that. All right, so that wraps up our presentation. I don't know if either of you want to say anything else, but yeah, that's a little bit about Hope Loves Company and our programs and how we help kids across the country. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for letting us share a little bit about Hope Loves Company.
Thank you so much for sharing what you guys offered. So we're ready to take some questions. If you'd like to type in your questions in the Q&A box, we're ready to answer them live. I do have one question about the Hangout. What is the typical size of your Hangouts per age group?
So that's a place that we're trying to grow a bit. I think it really kind of depends on the time of year, right? And but I think our younger group, we have somewhere between like maybe 5 and 7 per group. You might have the better statistics here, Shannon. And then our teen group can vary anywhere between 3 and 6 kids, just kind of depending on the month.
Yeah, that's kind of the amount of children that we have at the moment. Again, we are looking to grow this program, and it is something that we are continuously working on evolving our this program specifically. We had actually just recently changed the name of our group. So we've now calling it HLC Hangouts instead of group shares to make it a little bit more friendly for children who might be interested. So it sounds cool, right? So we're hoping that with the name change we just recently did, we'll start garnering some more interest. We've been promoting it a lot more and sharing it a lot more for families. We had one last night. We had a couple of kids dressed up in Halloween costumes, which was fun. So we really do encourage parents to check out our HLC Hangouts on our website. There's a little bit more information on there about that. But again, they happen once a month, and the kids really like seeing the same kids over and over and over again, and developing those relationships. So, and then having new kids coming in as we continue to promote these new programs.
That's awesome. And do you find that the same people are coming back every Hangout, or are they different? Like, do they like it to come back next time? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a little mixture of both. We do have a lot of the same repeat kids that come back and they love it. And then we have some new kids that join and may join once every other month. So we do have, I've noticed an uptick in newer registrants for our HLC Hangouts as of the last couple of months. So so we really enjoy, and a lot of the kids that do attend also attend our virtual camp as well. So there are some children that specifically will not come to our in-person camps and will only attend our virtual camps because they really enjoy that virtual aspect. So they're the ones that are always on our virtual calls, but we do see a lot of newer registrants coming in as of the last couple of months for those groups.
Awesome. Thank you. So we do have a question here from Maria. Can you please provide a list of ALS books for children and adolescents? Yes, we will be providing a recording of this and a list of all the books that Jennifer and Liz provided. So we will provide those and all the resources from HLC as well. Yes. So that's answered live. There is another question, or am I wrong here? Okay. Did I answer it? Okay. No more questions. We'll give it one more minute. No more questions? Well, all right. Well, we thank you so much. We hope that you found today's program helpful and educational. I sure did. I would like to give a special thanks to all of you presenters today for taking the time tonight. I know it is late at night for you guys to share your expertise and knowledge with us. And we want to thank you for tuning in, all of you. Before you leave, I would like to remind you that you should receive a recording of the program via email. If you still have any question that you remember later on, please send it to us and we will send you the answer hopefully shortly after. Thank you again. And we thank you for everything. Thank you for sharing this valuable information with us. Thank you and have a great night.